All right, 30-second reset, go.
All right. Welcome into 8 Things, where we take the 8 things every website should be doing and we break websites down and see how well they're doing it. I'm Justin Davis here with Chris Klaus. Thank you guys for joining us on this one. And this is still the real estate edition. We're looking at real estate websites and how well they do this. And today we have got the Tampa Bay Realty and Investment Group. And as usual, we're going to go through the 8 things, starting with the hero. Chris.
I love the hero. I love the hero.
What do we
It's
like
good,
here?
clean imagery. It's luxury imagery.
Yep.
It's got some oomph to be behind, just like help we find you a home, or here's homes. So like find your dream property, create value, right? So it starts to talk, it leads into that investment group kind of concept a little bit, even though it's very vague. And then although there's no explicit call to action in the hero portion, it immediately guides you into searching for a home. And so I think in this case, I can think that's a reasonable compromise.
Yeah.
It's not the best. So I give it like an 8.
Yeah, I think that's right. Like there's still not a very clear call to action. And the way that this search bar is separated from the header kind of makes the hero feel a little bit disconnected from that as a call to action. So I might treat that visually a little bit different. I might bound that box. I might float it a little bit so it lines up with the edge of the box with the copy. So it feels like it belongs to the hero a little bit more. But yeah, I mean, we've got a reasonably clear call to action. I absolutely can't stand this misalignment of the search button. Guys, those kind of things look sloppy. They look sloppy and they look like you don't care. Also, no padding between the labels and these form fields. Clean this up. Like this, it just are little details like that chip away a little bit at like what looks like quality, but it looks like you don't really pay attention all that much. So I'd clean up some of those things for sure.
Yeah, and to that end, there's not enough. I forget the term, but there's not enough variation between the dark color of location and the background of the brown.
Yeah,
those labels aren't doing. Unfortunately, that I hate this word. You're going to hate it as a UX designer. They don't pop enough. But the reality is they actually don't. They don't even meet the standards for legibility.
Yeah, that's right.
So I would increase either the font size, change the font color, or bold it, or do all 3 of those.
Yep.
But other than that, I generally like the hero. I would give it like an 8, even though it is missing a distinct call to action for a conversion event, which is kind of a no-no. But look, we've been to a million real estate websites. We've all used Zillow and everything else, right? And we know that's where people get the majority of their leads. However, the reality is, like, you have an opportunity to get a lead immediately.
Yep.
And they're missing out on that.
Yeah. So got to take a few points off of that. And I want to make one other comment before we move on to a secondary call to action, which is there's a carousel here in this header. And look, here's the thing, y'all. Carousels generally terrible idea. Should I use the carousel.com? Usually carousels are not a good idea. And the reason they're not a good idea is because generally speaking, people use them to display information, right? And so it's like, we have 5 marketing messages we need to get across. And so we put them all in the header. Well, nobody's going to see slide 2 through 5, right? Everyone's going to see slide 1. No one's going to see the rest of them. There's been plenty of eye tracking studies done on this. But in this case, it's a textural element. It's not conveying information. It's setting a mood. And so I think I can let it pass on those grounds.
It's funny. I always agree, right? I used to joke that if a CEO was giving me information I didn't want on the homepage and told me I had to be there, it would be slide 5 of the carousel. Nobody would see it. But generally, image carousels are one exemption from that, because they're just set a mood and a theme and a general quality, and the kinds of homes you're seeing, impart the kinds of homes that are selling. So I will not only give it a pass, I'll say it looks good.
Yeah, I agree with that. All right, let's look at a secondary call to action. We want a couple calls to actions because we want something primary that people are going to do. And we also want a secondary thing that's going to catch people who don't resonate with this primary call to action. Those secondary call to actions can be downloading a lead magnet, signing up for a list, something like that. Let's look down and see what they've got. Interestingly, okay, so these are pseudo call to actions,
They
right? They're
are.
not
And
really call to actions. Kind of pseudo.
I mean, I appreciate the, the choose your adventure. It's definitely hidden a certain theme for certain age, right? Kind of thing.
Yep.
And so I appreciate it. And they are kind of call to actions. Unfortunately, they probably don't take you directly to some sort of sign up
Yep.
thing. But we do homepages here, so we'll find out in a bit. I will say, as you were scrolling, I saw two more calls to action.
Yep.
But again, they're browsing. These are weak calls to action at this point because you've already done it twice up top. And at this point, you should be talking about, the advantages of the investment group. And the calls to action should be about acquisition of those potential customers. Okay.
Yeah, I think that.
So, is there any other calls to action if you scroll to the bottom?
Let's look. We got meet our team memberships, popular stories. No, send a message with a button that hangs over the footer image. No,
That's a bad location for a call to action at the bottom of a footer.
real bad.
It should be
That's
right
never
above
gonna
the
get.
footer.
That's never gonna get used.
Yeah.
That's
And also, very super minor, but I hate it when you let you real estate agents don't let your marketing firm get free links in your footer. Um,
this
sorry,
the design with
drives me nuts.
right.
Um,
If this happens, by the way, you should get a big discount on your website for this because you're giving free advertising space.
for sure, for sure. All right, sorry, that was not on the agenda. Let's hit the next item.
All right, excellent. Let's take a look at navigation. So, secondary call to action, just to kind of sum that up here, could be a little bit better. It's a little weak. It's not non-existent, but there's some room for improvement there.
Yeah,
Navigation,
I would actually give it a 4 out of 10.
4 out of 10. Like it. I will agree with that. So let's look at the navigation. Honestly, the navigation here, I don't have much problem with this. I think this is really clear. I think it makes a lot of sense. Home properties is probably going to have buy, sell. Yep. For sale, for rent. There's a bit of a pattern that develops here on the website where we bifurcate things into things for sale, things for rent, and search. I don't hate this at all. I think this is fine. What do you think?
I also don't hate it. There's a few, for me, there's maybe too many options. And I don't necessarily love that there's 3 drop downs as well, and that there's so many options. Um, I would tend to maybe want a few lesser options driving into pages that might drive to another page. And I
Mhm.
know you try to just, hey, we don't want people to click twice. Well, I mean, the reality is when you offer this many options, it can be a little bit of an overload situation. And so there's the whole thing, right? Like humans do best with 3 to 7 options.
Mhm.
And so if we can do that, you're in the best position. Ironically, when there's a lot of things on the shelf, you're less likely to buy than if there's one thing on the shelf, right? And so that's why calls to actions matter. But in this case, every link, every option in your navigation is an opportunity for somebody to do something you don't want, which is convert into a customer. And so a little bit of tightening up wouldn't hurt there.
Yeah, that's
That
right.
would be my only take.
Yeah, I think that's a great call out. I agree with that. It's a little bit sprawling, some of these things. It's not terrible, but
It's not.
yeah, I do agree it could be probably trimmed down just a little bit given just the type of website that we're talking about here. Um yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And you know what you mentioned is correct, which is that and this is a paradox that people don't realize, but there was a study done on this. Look up the JAM study, which is that when you give people more options, they choose fewer things. Scientifically proven, right? So don't think that more is better. Oftentimes, less is more when it comes to these things. So, not bad. Let's move on to the copy narrative. Let's talk about the copy narrative down the page and talk about how well they're telling a story and how well they're using the actual copy to support that. Starts with the hero, right? Helping you find the property of your dreams, creating real value in properties and places. Look, it's better than some we've seen. It's a little generic. It doesn't really say much about what these people do specifically. And this is a gripe that I have about a lot of things, mission statements, headers, all of that kind of thing, which is you got to say something unique and interesting, right? Now, this is better than just saying we sell real estate. Great. But there's nothing here in this particular statement that's really setting a tone for what they're about. So I got to take some points off for that.
Yeah, so let's scroll through it. Like, okay, so there's not a lot of copy. I mean, Choose Your Adventure is copy, and I personally
I don't hate
find
it.
it. I like it
Yeah.
personally. So,
Yeah. I think it's
our listing, this
oh
doesn't make sense because something's not loading there. So there's a huge issue, but we'll scroll past it. Look, Tampa Bay Realty and Investment Group, the key to your real estate needs, full service firm, residential sales and property, blah, 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 blah. That's what I see when I read that, right? It's very nondescript,
yep.
very boring, and it's non-differentiated.
Yep.
And that's where your copy and narrative matter. We'll talk about like brand later, but they really help build your brand and they help build your ethos and what you're selling. And this doesn't do it for me.
Yeah, I gotta agree with you. I think that again, weak story. Tampa Bay Realty and Investment Group, the key to your real estate needs, like very generic. It doesn't tell me anything about what they do specifically, right? It's we're full service real estate company. Doesn't everybody say this? Everybody says they specialize in residential sales, property management. Everybody says that not everybody says they sort of Tampa Bay and surrounding areas, but all the ones that we've been looking at, which is where we're at in Tampa Bay too. And so, yeah, there's just not much here in terms of differentiation. And again, we're going to get into brand. That's a little bit of a brand, but that also is part of how they're using the narrative. The other thing that I would say here, and this kind of comes back to call to action a little bit, is this is talking about why they are such a great firm, like why they are different. Presumably, it's talking about that, but the calls to action don't match it. The calls to action now are about browsing properties. This should be about like learning why they're different, like see our different, like experience it for yourself, that kind of thing. It like we already have this call to action already happens other places, right? And so it's a little bit of a mismatch in terms of where in the page this is happening and how that works. With the team, don't hate the team coming next. That's fine. The real estate is definitely a people type of business.
Yeah. Again, only thing is like they really are not paying attention to any type of text visibility patterns. The light gold on a green background, there's a large portion of the population that would struggle to read that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a great call out. And the other thing I'm going to mention too, guys, and this has now been a thing that we've noticed in a couple places on this site, which is the details, right? This is like the last 20% isn't quite there. Y'all, these headshots need to be standard. This is not, you can't have two in one setting like this. By the way, this framing is, its framing for this photo is awful. I understand you want to get the sign in there, but this is really poor quality photography. And for a realtor, I would expect you to be a little bit better at photography. So I'd get these headshots short up. They should look like these. These look great. This looks pretty sloppy. Our memberships. So they talk about the memberships. It's probably finds a little bit of a social proof. We're going to go there next. Popular stories. So overall, again, it's not horrible. I'm giving it a 5 out of 10, probably. There's not a ton of copy, which is probably good, actually. But what copy there is a little bit generic.
Honestly, and to that end, well, let's go to the next one because we'll cover them in the next sections.
Yeah.
Social proof. I love the fact that they have testimonials. A lot of the sites that we visited don't. And they're actually, it looks like pulling from places like Google. They get the ratings in there. Almost doesn't matter what the actual listings say, or what the actual testimonials say. It's just having them is a really
having
good
those
sign.
stars. Those stars are really important, right? Because people aren't going to read this, but they're going to look at the stars. And they're going to go this and go 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, right? Yes, it's manufactured, but this is good marketing.
Agreed. I don't hate it. And I actually like, there's two other pieces of social proof. And that was when they scroll down to the Meet the Team is a little bit of social proof, but the membership is social proof,
Yep.
for sure.
Yep.
And so that combination of, hey, people have said good things about us. Here are we, like we are part of the social proof, and here's our membership. That combination, I would give them like a solid 8 on testimonials and social proof.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. This is something we don't see all the time, and it doesn't seem like something that's terribly critical, but it does add kind of legitimacy by association. So I agree. I like it. I like it. Let's look at mobile
Bar-
readiness. What's that?
Great. I was just and the last one I was going to say borrowed legitimacy is a great thing.
Borrow legitimacy. That's right. Okay, so let's look at the mobile setup. You got to have mobile, guys. You got to get mobile right, because if you don't, you're going to get penalized in search and your users are going to hate you. So let's talk about what they're doing from a mobile standpoint. We collapsed down the menu, collapses into a familiar hamburger menu. That's handled quite well. That looks great. No issues there. Again, the form, again, the form looks sloppy. These labels touching up against the form fields, just a little slop that I'd want to get rid of. But in general, looks great on mobile. I have no issues with this on mobile, except for that very small thing. But that's really not about the mobile responsiveness. This responds great on mobile. I got no issue with it.
For me, the hamburger menu does work. It's not as good as a whole page, whole cover hamburger menu. So I would take a couple points off for just the menu. Everything else, because those are really small click surfaces.
They are small cookers. Yep.
And so in mobile, click surfaces are everything. So just for that, I would say give it an 8 out of 10.
Yep.
Other than that, I think turned out pretty well.
Yeah, I agree with that. Absolutely. So great job on mobile, y'all. Good job. All right, let's take a look now at look and feel. How we doing look and feel here? I mean, honestly, it's great. I mean, it's very clean. There's no real issues. Like I said, there's some problems with contrast. There's some problems with this kind of slop where we don't have any kind of space. We would call that margin or padding. In this case, margin. When in web lingo, but there's no space between this word here, what we'd also call a form label, and the form field itself. And so that's a knock on the visual. These kind of alignment issues, these are kind of things that are easy to clean up, y'all. And our eye follows this bottom line. That's called a registration line in design. And you can even see that the registration line gets broken here by about 2 pixels or so. People notice that. Even if they don't consciously notice it, they do notice those details. Their brain notices those details, and the brain goes, a little bit sloppy. So this is kind of chipping away at the quality of the look and feel, but in general, it's really nice.
Yeah, I would. The only thing I would say from a look and feel perspective is the colors on the color wheel. You're the UI UX guy, so I'll let you talk about it. But you have the opposite colors, right? And on the opposite side of the wheel, and they tend to stand out better.
Yeah.
So this green brown combination
Yep.
isn't my favorite. Goldish brown, like it's kind of a weird color,
Yep.
and it doesn't have enough of the visual distinction. That's probably other than that, like I kind of dig the green primary. I think their
Yep.
secondary color is not great.
Yeah, I don't love that gold color either. That kind of gold brown, to your point, and those kind of opposite sides of the color wheel, y'all. Those are complementary colors. And one thing that's interesting about complementary colors is sometimes when you put complementary colors on top of each other, it creates this really stark contrast. Depends on it. Like blue and yellow is a great example. If you put yellow on top of not blue and yellow, purple and yellow. If you put yellow on top of a purple background, it will almost blind you. You have to like work on the tint and shade of that yellow a little bit to get it to sit in well and not look so intense. But this is not enough contrast. I absolutely agree. This gold brown color doesn't feel like it goes with this kind of dark teal type of color here. So yeah, and it looks better on this, honestly. I don't mind it here. But I don't love it against this blue. So I absolutely think that's correct. I would probably honestly Well, I don't know. I might try using this dark color under here. Maybe might think about that. There are also some other ways you could do that. But yeah, in general, I don't love it. But it is a lot cleaner overall than we've seen on other sites. So let's wrap up
Agreed.
with brand and let's talk about brand.
All right. So now I've been in marketing for a long time. So I can spot um, stock images from a mile away. And hey, the real estate pictures themselves, I can't tell if they're stock images. So kudos to you. But there's a lot of vague stockiness, like the scroll back background, this family signing something.
Yeah.
Um, there's not a lot of personalization. There's not a lot of brand that goes into that. We talked about a lot of the other things. So the reason we put brand last or near the end here is because it all kind of adds up to your brand. And so the Tampa Bay Realty and Investment Group, you've established a brand there, and now everything else should be pushing into that brand and the differentiation. And so when I look here, um, like two of these things are random articles about Pinellas. Fine, that's fine. But the fourth one, three things you should know before investing in Tampa Bay real estate, that's on brand. And so
Yep.
things like the stories on brand, the testimonials, there was no bolding or those kinds of things, but we should be bolding things that are associated with our brand on the testimonials, right?
Yeah.
We should be highlighting the differentiation about investment via real estate versus just owning a home. So we should be leaning into the brand that we've established through our logo and our identity, and doing differentiation as much as possible, which we kind of highlighted before. So um, I think that would be my primary item that I would say here.
Yeah. And for me, it comes down to differentiation. There's just not much here that differentiates this site and this company from anybody else. I mean, there's nothing here that says, oh, that's why they are interesting to work with versus XYZ person, right? And so that to me is the biggest loss because branding is about differentiation and creating uniqueness around yourself in the marketplace so that people want to come to you instead of a competitor. It's not really being done effectively here at all.
Yeah, and look, real estate is all about people and it's all about relationships. And so the thing is, if you allow your real estate agents to completely own and dominate that, they're building those relationships. However, if you can spin the story so that when someone thinks of a realtor associated with you being, hey, these guys specialize not just in real estate, but also in making sure they're sound financial decisions that are going to lay the foundation for me and my family. Um, Now you're going to be taking credibility from everyone that's ever worked with you and everyone who might potentially work with you, and it's building something unique and sustainable.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. So there's a look at the Tampa Bay Realty and Investment Group. Overall, not doing a horrible job. There's a lot of things that are being done pretty well here. There's some places for improvement overall, but it's little things, right? And a few little things could really take this over the edge. So thank you guys so much for listening. There are 8 things to do on your website, and you may be doing them well, but you can always be doing them better. We'll be back soon with another look at another site. Cool.
Awesome. So